literally wouldn't hurt a fly.
President Biden will travel to New Orleans Monday to try to comfort grieving families. In Israel, Israeli strikes have killed at least 42 people in Gaza. Meanwhile, ceasefire talks are set to resume in Qatar. This is AP News. Fans are mourning the death of a founding member of the Osmond brothers.
Just like a yo-yo.
Wayne Osmond was number 4 of the 9 Osmond kids. With his brothers Merrill, Alan, and Jay, the Osmonds became regulars on the Andy Williams Show in the 1960s after being discovered at Disneyland.
Don't love me for fun.
They later added brothers Donnie and Jimmy. The Osmonds had hits with Love Me for a Reason, Yo-Yo, Hold Her Right, and Down by the Lazy River.
One bad apple.
Their song One Bad Apple was a number 1 hit in 1970. They moved to a more country sound in the 1980s. Wayne lost his hearing in the 1990s from a brain tumor and suffered a stroke in 2012 that made him unable to play guitar. I'm Archie Zaraletta.
New information about a black man who was found hanging in an abandoned Alabama home in late September. A state autopsy says Denoris Richardson died by suicide. That contradicts a private autopsy. I'm Jackie Quinn, AP News.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Jennifer Wojcicki. We'll see mostly sunny skies here for this afternoon, with temperatures holding rather steady. Windy northwest winds of 15 to 20 miles per hour, gusting as high as 25. Then for tonight, mostly clear with a low near 12 degrees. By Saturday, sunshine high of 21. Sunday, mostly cloudy high of 26. Monday, chance for snow early, cloudy high of 29. That's your latest Chicago weather update. Currently, it's 26.
You're the only voice of reason on the radio.
You give me hope.
Having listened to you every day.
Thank you for your clear insight.
Always felt a little bit smarter.
I listen to you every single day. I keep coming back to this station, and thank you for what you do.
On WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago columnist, writer, and blogger Eric Zorn.
Hello, everybody. Eric Zorn here. I'm the author and publisher and sole employee of the Picayune Sentinel, a weekly Substack newsletter that comments a lot on local politics, some on national politics. And for the first hour today, I'm going to be just talking to you about the year that just finished and the year ahead. Every year for, maybe the last 15 or 20, back when I was at the Tribune, I used to do predictions for the year. Every year I would do, with what's going to come up, and then at the end of the year I would look back and say, how did I do? And I'd ask readers to fill out a survey, and we'd see how the readers did. And usually the readers were a little smarter than I am. Their guesses were better. I sometimes don't like to use the word predictions because things are so hard to guess. I mean, they're just guesses, right? When you're talking about, it's not like in sports where you can really weigh the injuries and look at the teams and make it. Sometimes these things are just wild guesses, and I'm going to go through some of those wild guesses. I want to look back. I was really glad that they asked me to sit in for Joan today because I love the end of the year and the beginning of the new year. It feels like a momentous time, and so anyway, I'm going to look back at what we guessed for 2024, and here we go. On 13 of the questions last year in 2024, readers and I correctly guessed the following. We guessed correctly that Bally's Corp would break ground on that large casino project at the River West site of the Tribune printing plant used to be. And that was really up in the air at the time because Bally's looked like it wasn't going to get the funding, and they had that temporary casino up, and that wasn't doing all that well, so there was really a thought that might not happen. But we both guessed that it would. I say readers and I both guessed that it would. We also guessed that Melissa Conyers Irvin, the the state rep was going to lose to Danny Davis in the Democratic primary for the 7th U.S. Congressional District. People thought Davis was too old. They thought that Melissa Conyers-Irvin was a new fresh voice. But Danny Davis has some real staying power, and he won with 52.4% of that vote. And Melissa Conyers-Irvin, who was touched by a little scandal, had a 21.3%. So it was a crowded field, and Danny Davis won. We guessed correctly that the area's major daily newspapers, the Tribune, Sun-Times, and Daily Herald, would not abandon print editions on certain days, or even every day. That in cities around the country, you're seeing newspapers cut back to, say, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, maybe Wednesday through Sunday, or just Wednesday and a weekend edition in order to save money. And the truth is that a lot of these newspaper issues, Saturday editions, Monday editions, even Tuesday editions, don't actually make money. They don't circulate enough. They don't have enough special sections. They are put out there by tradition for the most part. That the publishers believe that to be there every day is really important, even though they're going to be losing money on some days. And this has been true for a long time. I was on a committee in the Tribune back in 2008, 2009, when we were looking at ways to save money and looking at how the financial crisis at the time was going to impact newspapers. And there was some talk, should we get rid of the Saturday edition? Should we get rid of the Monday edition? And there are reasons. Saturday edition usually has a lot of car ads in it and display ads. Decided to keep them, and every year there's a question. It's like, when is the Sun-Times or the Tribune or the Daily Herald going to cut back on their publication schedule and just have digital replica editions available? And we both guessed that this was not going to happen, and we were correct, although that question is one that I certainly ask for next year. We agreed that Donald Trump would be the Republican nominee for president. That really wasn't much doubt back then. We also agreed that 2024 would be the hottest year on record, breaking the record set by 2023, which unfortunately it did. We guessed that the Republican House of Representatives would not impeach Democratic President Joe Biden, despite all their sword rattling to the effect that they were going to do that. There was lots of talk that was going to happen, and of course it didn't. And because they had nothing particular on Biden, even though they kept saying they did, and certain pundits would refer to the Biden crime family, and of course they never came up with the goods on that. We also guessed that correctly, me and the readers, that the average national price of a gallon of regular unleaded gasoline would be higher than $3 at year's end. We were just barely right about that because the national average, when I put this poll together, was $3.03. Let me look at what it is right now. It's $3.67 1/100ths of a cent. So it's basically $3.01 rounded off right now. So it's we were just barely correct about that. But $3 a gallon seems not outrageous to me. But we guessed that the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which was then a year ago was about 37,500, would break 40,000 at some time during the year, and it did hit that mark in May. It's now at about 43,000. We guessed that correctly that Vladimir Putin would remain Russia's president, that China would not attempt to annex Taiwan, that the Cubs would win more games than the White Sox. That was dramatically true this past year. I don't think anyone quite predicted the White Sox would be as epically bad as they were, as entertainingly bad as they were. They ended up losing 121 games, which is just stunning. We guessed that Michigan, the University of Michigan, my alma mater, I should say, would win the college football championship, and they did. And we guessed that Simone Biles would win at least one gold medal in the Summer Olympics, and she actually won 3. Now, we were incorrect. Readers and I were incorrect in the following 6 predictions. We guessed that incumbent President Joe Biden would be the Democratic nominee for president, and that looked plausible at the time. There was no serious challenger to him. Nobody was running against him in Iowa, South Carolina, New Hampshire, of any heft. So it looked like he was a shoo-in, and there, a lot of us, me included, were not thrilled about that prospect, that he did look like he was wearing down by age. His rationale was that he was going to be the strongest candidate to beat Trump, that he had beaten him before. And so he was going to hang on. And we all know, sadly, how that turned out, that he hung on too long. It was late July that he decided to bow out and only gave Kamala Harris a little bit more than 100 days to make a campaign. And of course, it came up a little bit short. We guessed that the Democratic Party, readers and I guessed the Democratic Party would win control of the U.S. House, and sadly that did not happen. We guessed that Benjamin Netanyahu would no longer be prime minister of Israel at the end of the year, at the end of 2024. He is in political peril over in Israel, and that question remains open for next year. But he is still prime minister. We guessed that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce would break up. And that's, that Taylor Swift, obviously the pop star, Travis Kelce, the star receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. We guessed that they would break up. And that seems like a pretty smart guess whenever it comes to these celebrity couples, especially ones that were so high profile and so new at the time. But they are still together as far as anyone knows. We guessed that it was going to be either Nikki Haley or Carrie Lake who would be the Republican vice presidential nominee. It was, Haley had gotten sideways with Trump, but a lot of people who get sideways with Trump get back on his side, as we've seen in the House today, even where people who originally speak out against Trump or who are not in his pocket decide that being in his pocket is the best place to be. Readers thought it was going to be Nikki Haley. I thought it was going to be Carrie Lake, and neither of them made it. Of course, it was J.D. Vance, who will be sworn in as vice president. We also predicted that former Illinois House Speaker Mike Madigan would be convicted at his federal corruption trial, but I pushed that question off to next year because that trial is still going on. They're fighting about jury instructions, and I think the closing arguments are going to be in the middle of this month, so we don't know what's going to happen there. Now, readers were right, and I was wrong in this area. Readers correctly predicted that Democrat Eileen O'Neill Burke would win the race for Cook County State's attorney. They correctly predicted that Elon Musk would still own Twitter at the end of the year, or X, as some people call it, including Elon Musk. The readers thought that Hunter Biden would be convicted or plead guilty to some federal offenses. I thought he would not. I thought there was nothing there, and I was wrong about that. He did plead guilty to some offenses, and of course has been pardoned since then. Readers thought that Donald Trump would be convicted of one or more felonies. I thought no trials were going to take place in 2024. I thought they were going to successfully delay until the election, and I was wrong about that. 34 felony convictions in that New York hush money case. Readers predicted that Russia and Ukraine would not sign a peace treaty, and I thought they would. I thought that war of attrition was going to come to some resolution by the end of 2024, and that was not the case, sadly. The readers predicted the White Sox would not announce a move to Nashville or to the suburbs, and I thought that they would at the time. I thought the momentum was on the side of the White Sox deciding that they didn't want to be in Chicago and that they weren't going to get the funding for a new stadium in the 78 neighborhood. And the readers thought that the Bears would not announce a move to Arlington Heights or a suburban location, and I thought that was a done deal. I thought the the Bears were going to. They bought the land at the Arlington Park Racecourse. They were going to move out there, and they were just trying to play the angles and get lower property tax rates out of Arlington Heights. They succeeded in talking Arlington Heights down in that effort, but they're still angling for a lakefront stadium as their preference. They want to tear down Soldier Field and build a nice new dome stadium there at a cost to taxpayers of God knows how much, and or maybe they'll be at the Michael Reese site south of McCormick Place. We're not sure, but that's still up in the air. And I thought that the Bears were going to hang on to Justin Fields. Now that was a really bad prediction on my part. Just look back on it and wonder what I was thinking. But the readers correctly saw that we were going to get rid of Justin Fields. The Bears were going to get rid of Justin Fields and move on. Now, I was right, and readers were wrong on the following 6 predictions. I thought that a third-party independent candidate would not capture more than 3% of the 2024 presidential vote. Readers thought it was going to be 3% or more. It was only 1.46%. This was another election in which these third-party or alternative candidates, independent candidates, really had almost no effect. I don't think you could say for certain that 1.46% would have gone to Kamala Harris if those candidates were not in the race. Because some of that actually went to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., surprisingly. People still voted for the guy. Former 14th Ward Alderman Ed Burke would spend time in prison in 2024. I predicted that. I was correct. He has reported to prison. And readers thought that he would not. And I correctly saw that the Bring Chicago Home referendum seeking to increase the real estate transfer tax on Chicago properties worth more than $1 million would fail. And it did lose by about 8 percentage points. Readers thought that it would pass. I think it's generally a popular idea, and it might come back. But voters just did not trust the Chicago City Council to make that move. They didn't want to give them that extra money. I think that was a mistake on the part of voters. But that's how it turned out. I predicted that the Democrats would lose control of the U.S. Senate. I just looked at the map and said these seats are going to fall, and we're going to lose Joe Manchin because he's retiring, and West Virginia is a red state. On and on. I correctly predicted that. I predicted that Jim Harbaugh, the coach at the University of Michigan, my alma mater, I get that right this time, would leave for the NFL, and he's currently coaching the San Diego Chargers to a winning season and the playoffs. And I correct. This is my last one here. We'll look on to 2025 in just a moment. The last one, Northwestern had a really good season with football not in 24, but in 23. Coach Pat Fitzgerald was fired in that hazing scandal. They had a new coach. The team looked like it was going to be in disarray. And they did really well in 2023. So the question was, is that program resurgent? Or is it going to revert to the mean? I thought it was going to revert to the mean. They would not win 7 games. And in fact, they only won 4 games. They were 4-8 for the 2024 season. So if you're keeping score at home, and I'm keeping score in the Picayune Sentinel, if you would like to check all these again, I went 19 for 39, and the readers went 21 for 39. So I have to offer my congratulations to the Hive Mind. Now, let's look ahead to 2025, and I would entertain some of your calls with your predictions, your calls and/or texts to 773-763-WCPT or 773-763-9278. That's 773-763-9278. You can text or call, and we talk about what we're predicting for the year ahead. Now, most of the questions that I have are kind of yes/no questions. They have a definitive answer. Now, some of you may want to just talk about, you may want to offer a prediction that's a little bit vague, like things are not going to be that good in Chicago next year, or the homeless problem is going to get worse, or we're going to have a greater influx of immigrants. I don't necessarily know how to measure those things, so I don't put them in the predictions forecast. But it is something that we are thinking about. A lot of those questions are what we are thinking about. That whether school performance is going to go up and down, what's going to happen. Anyway, there are a lot of little questions. Is this a good time to take a break? Let's take a short break here. I'm Eric Zorn from the Picayune Sentinel, formerly from the Tribune. I'm sitting in for the vacationing Joan Esposito, who will be back on Monday during this time slot, and her guests will include Jeffrey Korn, director of the Center for Military Law and Policy at Texas Tech, Terry Ross, executive director of the Illinois Legal Aid Online, and author Spencer Critchley. This is Live, Local, and Progressive, WCPT 820.
Out Chicago.
How are you doing,
I am
Ellen Miller?
immersing myself in as many positive experiences, i.e. theater, music, whatever I can do.
Look, I keep going back to doing your joy homework.
Yes.
During this point, joy is a practice. And you have to actively seek out the things that bring you joy.
Catch Out Chicago every Sunday, 11 to 1 on WCPT 820.
Need parts fast? O'Reilly Auto Parts has fast. Need them now? We've got now. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. We're O'Reilly Fast. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago columnist, writer, and blogger Eric Zorn.
It's Eric Zorn from the Picayune Sentinel, formerly from the Tribune, sitting in for Joan today. And we're talking about predictions. And one of the questions that I did not put on my predictions list was whether Mike Johnson was going to hang on to the speakership in the House of Representatives. And the reason was that I was putting the questionnaire together, and Donald Trump came out and endorsed Speaker Johnson. I thought, well, that's it. It's going to be done. All the Republicans just fall in line, and it's going to happen. And it did happen today, but it was close. It was tense. There was some time, maybe it's 45 minutes or so, where there were at least 2 or 3 Republican holdouts, and Johnson talked the necessary, I think he just needed 2 to get them in. And Steve from the Gold Coast is on line 2, and let's call that up. Steve, are you with me?
Yes, I am.
So it says here speakership. I'm guessing you're talking about Mike Johnson. What's going on?
Yes. Well, as you alluded to, it perhaps gives us an idea of the landscape going forward. One would have anticipated that the Republican Party would have had its ducks in a row. We've known for quite some time exactly where all the races have fallen, and that there was going to be an election today with regard to getting a speaker. And you would think that they would have, again, been able to count votes and made deals beforehand. But I think that this was a way of sending a message on the part of a few members who are MAGA, shall we say, in orientation to the speaker that, at any time, we reserve the right to hold you accountable and to remove you just as we did Kevin McCarthy beforehand. And I think it says a great deal about, the Republican Party moving forward, that they are not of one mind necessarily, and that there are different kinds of Republicans. And so I think that we might see a couple of speaker races going forward before the midterms in a couple of years. So it just... It depends on where you stand on that, but that would be a prediction I would make. I think the Republican Party is not one party.
I think you're sort of right about that. I was hoping that there was going to be a vote that was going to fall like 10 or 15 short, and that would have really sent a message. And then maybe those same 15 would have gradually come around and come back, but to really, stamp their feet a little bit and say, this isn't what we want, this is what we will settle for. The fact that there were only 3 holdouts, as I remember, I was watching the news earlier, I think it was 3, but they needed 2. Remember, they needed 2 to switch, and they got the 2 that they needed, I guess, just to twisted some arms or maybe made some promises. I don't know, but
well, keeping in mind that if the rumor mill is correct, that there are a couple of Republicans who are currently seated that will be tapped to be part of the Trump administration, meaning that they will lose a couple of those seats. And those won't be filled for a while. So that means that they will have as small as a 1-vote majority in the House. So in terms of this vote, yes, they had a little bit more wiggle room. But what happens when they lose a couple of those votes? And then just virtually anything can happen. And you miss a flight, you get sick. All of a sudden you've got a tie vote on a major issue.
It could be, although, I do wonder, is Mike Johnson the best that Democrats could really hope for in a case like this? I saw one of the other votes was for Jim Jordan. I think it would be a disaster.
Yeah. Absolutely. he's the better choice in my view. And yeah, I think there are elements of, shall we say, the MAGA Republican movement that resent his having cut a deal and ensured additional funding for Ukraine and so forth earlier in 2024. That they wanted to hold out. No more funding for that. They have their sort of diluted belief system with regard to what's going on in Ukraine, and they didn't want that funding secured. So they weren't happy with Johnson for having done so, because Johnson actually sat down and listened to the intelligence community, and this is what they told him. And after that, he said, yes, this is something we do need to continue to fund.
Yeah.
So,
how dare he? Is there some new House rule proposed that only Republicans can call for a new vote for a speaker? I was reading something that they're trying to change the House rules on that, and I don't know if that would play into how a vote would be called, because you do have to have somebody, I think, or maybe, I can't remember. I remember it was just one. Kevin McCarthy had to agree that it was only like one member of the House could call for a vote, and then the whole process had to be gone through. I don't remember what the news is on that, but it does seem really difficult to get a new vote. But, we'll see. Steve, thanks for the call.
If it's the one.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if it's the one, then are there enough crazy people on the Republican side to where we could see a vote after vote after vote being called with regard to the Speaker retaining his position? Yeah, which is a frightening thing. But on the other hand, I am for anything that throws a monkey wrench into the Republican agenda until 2026.
Well, likewise. So, hey, Steve, thanks very much for the call. I appreciate it very much. Let's talk about 2025, what we are looking at coming up. I have a bunch of questions about that, and I have my answers, and I have the readers' answers, my readers. If you'd like to join my community of readers, by the way, you can email me. I'm Eric Zorn at Gmail, ERICZORN at gmail.com. Or you can go to ericzorn.substack.com, and that's the Picayune Sentinel. It's been going on for like 2.5 years now. Fairly successful as these things go. I get a pretty good audience, and it brings in enough to make it worth my while, and it's been a lot of fun. People ask me, like, are you enjoying it? And I go, I'm having more fun doing this than I ever had writing a column. It's a little bit less pressure, a little bit less work, and I'm able to indulge all kinds of little momentary interests I have in things like music and sports, and I do a lot of comedy. I do some of the funniest tweets, as they used to be called. I now call them quips, because I'm not an X person. I don't use that term. I just want to stick finger in the eye of Elon Musk. So I call it. I still call it Twitter, but I refer to the jokes that I post as quips. I have the visual ones and the written ones out. So we're going to take a short break here at the bottom of the hour and come back, and we're going to look at 2025, my predictions and your predictions, and I would like to include you in that conversation. Then Cate Plys is coming up in the 3 o'clock hour, followed by Chad Leverenz, a photographer, and then I'm going to be talking to Gregory Royal Pratt of the Tribune. It's Eric Zorn for Joan Esposito.
This is a WCPT Veteran Minute. After working several odd jobs in New York City, Henry Johnson found his way into the National Guard during World War I. Johnson was assigned to the 369th Infantry Regiment, but the all-black unit was better known as the Harlem Hellfighters. The Hellfighters' first task was assisting the French Fourth Army. On May 15, 1918, Hellfighter Johnson noticed Germans attempting to break in. Johnson retreated to get backup from the French troops, noticing German soldiers were attempting to kidnap another Hellfighter. Despite standing at only 5'4", Johnson sprung into action. With only 3 bullets and a bolo knife, Johnson was able to kill 4 enemy soldiers and wounded 21 others, causing them to retreat, saving himself and his men. However, Johnson received a total of 21 injuries all over his body, including his left foot being shattered. Johnson was discharged, and his papers did not show his heroism or his injury, leaving him unable to receive any disability compensation, leaving Johnson penniless at the time of his death at age 36. Johnson's heroism went unnoticed for decades until President Barack Obama awarded him the Medal of Honor in 2015.
You are listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
I'm meteorologist Ray Miller from the Weatherology Weather Center. Partly cloudy tonight with a low temperature of 12 degrees and northwest winds at up to 25 miles an hour. Saturday, sunny with a high temperature of 22. Sunday, cloudy, high temperature of 28. Northwest winds at 10 to 20. Monday, chance of light snow with a high temperature around 30. Tuesday, partly sunny and a high of 25. And for Wednesday, partly sunny with a high temperature around 19. That's the latest Chicago weather update. Right now, it's 25.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago columnist, writer, and blogger Eric Zorn.
Break a leg. Have a good show.
Again, it's Eric Zorn, who's sitting in for Joan today. She'll be back on Monday with a nice lineup of guests. Tonight, from 5 to 7, Patty Vasquez will be here taking your calls and talking to Susana Flores, a psychologist and author, and Ellie Krug, transgender activist, author, lawyer, and a host of a new Saturday show, The Illegal Trans Woman, on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Plus, Patty Vasquez will have the last two $25 gift cards for Fry the Coop to give away. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez, weeknights on WCPT AM 820. Every year in the Picayune Sentinel, and before that every year in the Chicago Tribune, I asked readers to predict the news. I put up a click survey online, asked them to predict the news for the coming year, and then I offered my predictions in contrast to theirs. And then at the end of the year, we took a look and saw who did well, who beat whom. Readers usually beat me in these guesses. The hive mind tends to be smarter than the individual mind, I guess. And I'm going to take a look at what the questions are for 2025, what we're looking ahead to. And I will take your phone calls and texts at 773-763-WCPT. That's 773-763-9278. Will the Chicago Teachers Union go on strike in 2025? Little aside, when I posted this question, at first I put 2024 because, the whole thing about, are you still writing the wrong year on your checks? I so seldom write checks anymore. That doesn't happen. But it was still like reflex to write 2024. And I got a bunch of readers calling in, or writing in, I should say, and saying that I had messed that up. And there was another place in the questionnaire where I did that. And there's another error that I made, and I fixed it as quickly as I could online and in the questionnaire. And I'll tell you about that when we get to the question. Will the teachers union go on strike in 2025? 55% of my readers so far, this is just a temporary, provisional results. The poll will be open until next Wednesday. So it's almost a week, 5 more days anyway, that you can fill out this poll. Go to ericzorn.substack.com and you can find it in the most recent issue. Will the Chicago Teachers Union strike? Readers said yes. 55% said yes. I'm saying no. I don't think the CTU is going to go on strike because I think that Stacey Davis Gates, who's the president of the union, and the leadership there realizes that they are having some public relations problems right now because of their alliance with Mayor Johnson. That getting Mayor Johnson, who used to work for them and whose campaign they funded for mayor in 2023, that has been a double-edged sword for them. That there is a sense that that voters have in Chicago, certainly the major publications and their editorial boards have been strongly making the case that this was not a good move, and to have the mayor sitting essentially on the same side of the bargaining table as the CTU. And I think that a strike would be bad for Mayor Johnson, and it would probably be bad for the teachers union. And the offer on the table right now, as I read the stories from the Chicago Public Schools, Pedro Martinez, is not an unconscionable offer. That they have offered relatively decent pay raises and some other things. And I think that the teachers union will end up taking half a loaf or 3/4 of a loaf and settling the contract with the new school board, I hope, rather than the current one. I think that the demands of democracy would require them to wait until the new school board that was elected in November, partially elected, I should say, the school board, 10 members will be from the elected, and then another 10 plus the chair will be appointed by the mayor. But to wait for that new school board coming in mid-January to finalize that contract. That was question number one. Question number two, will the Chicago Public Schools take out a loan of $100 million or more to cover costs of the new teacher's contract? 66% of readers and I said yes. That right now there's this controversy over the amount of the loan that Mayor Johnson has been urging Pedro Martinez to take out a $300 million short-term loan to cover the costs of the new contract, and this has caused a lot of consternation. Martinez thinks it is fiscally irresponsible, and the editorial boards have from the Tribune and Sun-Times, and probably Crane's too, I haven't seen their editorial on it, but have all said that this is not wise, and it's never wise, except in extreme emergencies, for governments to take out big loans to pay for current operating expenses. That is a bad idea, but I do think that they will take out a loan of somewhere around $100 million in order to cover those costs, that will be seen as a compromise. But actually, as I'm sitting here talking about it, I'm thinking maybe I'm wrong about that. So. But I have been wrong before. Will Mayor Brandon Johnson's approval rating exceed 20%? In polls taken near the end of the year, they're around 14-15% right now. He's had a pretty bad year, PR-wise. A lot of missteps. The shot spotter was not a popular decision that he made, announcing a $300 million property tax increase, which, again, I never thought that was a terrible idea compared to some of the other taxes and fees that he's had to raise. I don't know why property taxes are the third rail, but they seem to be. And 87% of readers and I said that no, his approval ratings will not go over 20%. I think that voters are just disgruntled, Johnson, and he has not been able to have the successes that he needs in order to get his foot on the ladder of public opinion to start going up. I think he's going to have another tough year, and then and by the end of the year we'll be starting to talk about his reelection prospects. Now, the reelection is not until 2027, early 2027. But the candidates will be lining up, and critics will be after him by the beginning of 2026. So I think that election is going to begin in earnest in about a year, like the campaigning, I should say, not the election. What will be the state of Bears stadium plans at year's end? Now, this is a version of the question we asked last year. 67% of readers and I agree that the Bears will still be dithering. I thought the Bears were going to pull the trigger last year. They did not, and I think that they are going to still be trying to have some chess moves and convince the city and the state to cough up money so they can build on the lakefront again. I think they're going to still be holding out for that. It is nice to have the Bears playing at a beautiful stadium with the blimp shots or the helicopter shots or drone shots, whatever they are now, of the skyline and the lakefront and the stadium. That's nice. I don't know that it's hundreds of millions of dollars nice. That for most of us, Bears games are TV shows that we are watching at home in our living rooms or our dens, and we don't really care where it's being played if it's in the area. And I don't think there's a huge public sentiment like let's cough up a lot of money that could go to police and fire and schools and infrastructure improvements. Let's put that into a stadium for these extremely wealthy families that own sports venues and the extremely well-paid athletes who play for them. I just don't think there's any appetite for that, but the Bears will be holding out for that. And what will be the state of the White Sox stadium plans? Again, 90% of readers and I agree that they'll still be dithering. And again, with both teams, I think if you had good performances, if the Bears were having a great winning season, that there'd be a lot more affection for the Bears, a lot more interest in keeping them here. If the White Sox hadn't set a Major League Baseball record for losses in a season last year, that you might have a little bit more enthusiasm. So like, yeah, let's put a stadium for him there on the 78. That'll be nice with the skyline in the background. But I just don't see that happening. I want to take a couple of phone calls here. Let's see, who's been waiting longest? Ron from Chicago wants to do a prediction for 2025. Ron, you're on WCPT with Eric Zorn.
Yes, I have a couple pessimistic ones. One I think is that Trump will take us out of the NATO alliance. I just don't see him going forward with NATO, and that will not be good for the rest of Europe.
It would be awful. You got any more on Trump?
Yes. Another one is that with all of the cabinet nominations, I'm afraid all of those are going to go through, as bad as they are.
Yeah, that's interesting that you would mention that. That is certainly one of the predictions, and if you don't mind, I'm going to go through those right now. I said which of these nominees would pass. My readers, 71% of my readers thought that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will be confirmed for Secretary of Health and Human Services, and Kash Patel, 68%, said he would be confirmed for FBI Director. I think that's true. I think those are both right. But my readers think that Pete Hegseth for Defense Secretary and Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence will fail, that the Republican Senate is going to get up on its hind legs. So that's an interesting prediction on your part. But the NATO alliance, that is scary. That what you're saying, I think that would be really awful. That's so awful that I didn't even think about asking a question about it. So, but Ron, I appreciate your call. Thanks very much.
Okay. All right.
We have Ron from Michigan. He is making Ron from Michigan. You're on WCPT. Hi.
I predict that the Republicans, once they consolidate power in about 6 months and take over the FBI and the CIA, you'll see further persecutions of former enemies of Trump and political people, Obama. And, people are saying in 2 years we're going to get something back. I don't see any elections of any consequences ever happening again in this country. When I say the Republicans are going to consolidate their power, they're going to strip away voting rights, and you ain't going to get them back. And it's just going to be a steady flow of fascism, in my opinion. I hate to be so bleak, but I've been around for 3/4 of a century, and I see the steady march, plain and simple. And it's the voting. What are we saying? 20 million of our people did not come out to vote? You think they're going to come out to vote again? It was 20 million people. We're going to lose even more because they're going to be discouraged. Their benefits are going to be stripped away. And it's just so sad. I mean, here in Michigan, we're losing unity. The Arab community is now Trumpsters. I don't care what you say, and it's going to exacerbate the destruction of their people in the Middle East.
That was stunning to me that the Muslim community thought that Donald Trump was going to be a better option. I mean, even Jill Stein, but that they thought Donald Trump was going to be better for the Palestinian people than Biden or Harris was a stunning decision. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hope that you're wrong about this enthusiasm gap and the voters, and that in 2018 and in 2022, our voters, the progressive Democratic voters, did come out. They did stop the predicted red wave. They were energized. I don't know why they weren't energized this time, and it's very discouraging because if what's going to happen in the next few years doesn't energize them, I don't know what will. This is Eric Zorn sitting in for Joan Esposito. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back on WCPT AM.
Adopt, don't shop. This is Dr. Craig from Mark Drugs. We're proud to support WCPT's Pet of the Month, benefiting the Anti-Cruelty Society. Adopt, don't shop is the movement that promotes animal rescue over pet stores. Illinois has wisely outlawed pet stores, but many of those operators merely moved over the border to Indiana or Wisconsin. Their dogs largely come from inhumane puppy mills and live shorter lives with a myriad of health problems caused by overbreeding. I have several canine patients that are on an extensive regimen of medicines simply to extend their lives. I believe every dog deserves a loving home, proper nutrition, and a chance at a long, healthy life. In my experience, rescued mixed-breed dogs are the healthiest of all. So stop by the Anti-Cruelty Society location in the city or log on to their website to find your potential next family member. Or check out markdrugs.com to see this month's Pet of the Month. Remember, you have a choice when it comes to your health care, and a great choice is Mark Drugs in Deerfield and Roselle. Get better health and care for you and your pets.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago columnist, writer, and blogger Eric Zorn.
Tomorrow on The Big Picture, host Edwin Eisendrath is back. His guests are Larry Diamond, Senior Fellow in Global Democracy at Stanford University, Laura Rodriguez, Vice President of Government Affairs at the Center for American Progress Action, Bill Scher of the Washington Monthly, and legal analyst Jill Wine-Banks. That's The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath, Saturdays from 1 to 4 on WCPT AM 820. I interviewed Jill Wine-Banks when I was an intern at the Miami Herald in 1979. So she's been around for a long time, and she is very smart. She was part of the Watergate Committee back so long ago, an attorney who served with that. So that ought to be a really interesting show. That's Ed Eisendrath's show, The Big Picture. Talking about predictions for 2025, and I'm going to be going through these predictions as the show goes on. Cate Plys is a Chicago historian, journalist, woman about town, is going to be joining me in the 3 o'clock hour. We're just going to shoot the breeze about a lot of stuff. Cate is really, as I've told her in the most flattering terms possible, one of the nerdiest, most focused and energetic reporters that I've ever known, and she's always fun to talk to. And we'll be talking some of these predictions with her, but I'm going to keep going on mine here. There's a question in this survey, which I posted to readers at ericzorn.substack.com, and if you can't write that down, just email me, ericzorn@gmail. I'll put you on the list, and you can read that. Will former House Speaker Michael Madigan spend time in prison in 2025? And, of course, this question is partly about whether he's going to be convicted at the trial. Right now, they are going through jury instructions, and then there's going to be the closing arguments will be made, and I don't expect a verdict until maybe January 20th, something like that. It's going to be a while. Justice in the federal building is very slow, and the question of whether let's assume that he's convicted, and the reason that assumption is not out of bounds is that they have about a 90% conviction rate in that building, that the federal prosecutors are tend to be very successful. I know that former Speaker Madigan has an amazingly skilled legal team behind him, and he could be acquitted. You never know. There's some changes in the rules from the Supreme Court about what constitutes corruption, and they're fighting about that with the jury instructions right now. But just to give you a little bit of a sense of a timeline about, like, Ed Burke, he was convicted on December 21st, 2023. And he was not sentenced until June 24th. So it was basically 6 months. 7 months? That's 6 or 7 months. Anyway, long time. Then it took him another 3 months to report to prison, because they have this long, they don't, in serious criminal trials, violent criminal trials, you're convicted, they put you in cuffs and march you out the door into the Sally port and off to prison. But in the federal system, they give you a long time. In this case, I think it was 7 months to report to prison. And then they give you another 3 months or so to get your affairs in order before you have to go. And so that was 9 months. In April of 2006, a jury found former Governor George Ryan guilty His sentencing hearing was 5 months later in September of 2006, but then he appealed and they kept him out of prison. He didn't report to prison for 18 months until he was convicted. So I voted no is my way of explaining why I don't think that Speaker Madigan will be in prison in 2025. Readers thought that he would be. That's a question I asked readers, will Chicago have fewer than 550 homicides in 2025? And the approximate current number is about 575 for this year. That number's been going down steadily since 2019. And I think that it will be under 550. I think that and part of this is just optimistic on my part of it. And readers, 51% of readers, very close, 51% of readers said that they thought that it would be fewer than 550. I certainly hope so. It's so appalling and shocking and sad to think when the new year turns and you hear the fireworks going off, to think that there are more than 500 people out there in Chicago who will be slain, who will be killed by another person in the coming year. And all of them are right now walking around, and all of them are doing fine, but that they will be dead in a year due to the seemingly intractable violent crime problem that we have. Although it is getting a little better, and so I hope that's true. We'll see. Will any major local print publication turn some editions into digital only? 53% of readers say yes, that they will. This is a change from last year. I'm still saying not yet. I think it's not quite time yet for the Tribune or Sun-Times or Daily Herald or Cranes to abandon a print edition and go online only. But that day is coming. I am sure that day is coming. There are not enough people who are subscribing to print editions of newspapers. And I see this in the morning on my block where I look out and see the delivery person come down the street, drive down the street, stop once, throw a couple of papers on some porches and keep going. Used to be, when I first moved into that neighborhood 30 years ago, 35 years ago now, that you'd see, just about every porch had at least one paper on it. And that's just the way the world's going. I do most of my reading online. I'd read the digital replica of the Tribune, but I don't read the actual print copy except on Sunday. So, who or what will be named Time Magazine's Person of the Year for 2025? It's kind of an out there question. Donald Trump was the Person of the Year last year, and it's important to remember that Person of the Year is not necessarily the honor that Trump, anyway, seems to think that it is, and a lot of people seem to believe that it's an honor. It has been given to some of history's greatest villains. The Ayatollah Khomeini and Hitler was was Time Magazine's Man of the Year. It's the most important newsmaker, and they have gone away from the idea of it being it was Man of the Year, that was Person of the Year, but even the Person of the Year rubric has allowed them to have things like Me, I think, was one of them. One year they just had the self-absorption was the Person of the Year. I thought readers think that it's not going to be. I gave them 5 choices: artificial intelligence, Elon Musk, Donald Trump again, Vladimir Putin, or other. 62% of readers thought it was other. They didn't think that any of those were going to be named Person of the Year, and that's probably a smart guess. I think that artificial intelligence, that story, is going to dominate the news this year and will be their pick for Person of the Year, even though it's not even a person. But I think it's going to be artificial intelligence. It's going to drive the news greatly. We'll see, but I think it's a really important question. What about the rate of inflation? It was 2.7% last measurement I got. That was at the end of November. I think the end of December number hasn't come out yet, but if it has, I missed it. But it's about 2.7% now. Of course, it spiked during the Biden administration, which was a huge problem for the re-election for the election of Kamala Harris. And, of course, people identified her with President Biden's policies, which certainly played into inflation, which was a global problem, not just a U.S. problem. The question was, will it be over 4% at the end of November 2025, which is when I'll be able to evaluate the rightness or wrongness of these questions. Will it be over 4%? Yes. 56% of readers said yes, it's going to be over 4%. The Donald Trump's claim that he's going to bring prices down doesn't really comport with his plans to lower taxes for the rich, and doesn't comport with his plans to add all these tariffs to goods from China and Mexico and Canada in particular. So I think that the readers are right that there's going to be it's going to be over 4% at the end of November 2025, because those of you who might have voted for Donald Trump thinking he was going to lower grocery prices were off base, were incorrect. That's not going to happen. And even he's admitted that. He said when he was campaigning, I'm going to bring the prices down. And then after he was elected, he was like, well, it's very hard to bring prices down. It is very hard to bring prices down once they're up. It happens with gasoline and things like that are in this global supply, things that are affected by a lot of stuff. But bringing prices down is not easy. Will Elon Musk, question I asked, will Elon Musk still own the social media company formerly known as Twitter at the end of the year? 93% of people said yes. And I said no last year, but I said yes this year. I think that it's a money loser for him, clearly. But I think he sees it as one of the main sources of his influence and power with Donald Trump. That, Trump is not really big into electric cars, and I don't know that he cares that much about SpaceX, but he does care about social media messaging. And one of the other questionnaires that I saw, year-end questionnaires, wondered whether Truth Social and Twitter would merge. If that happens, I might actually abandon Twitter. I'm still calling it Twitter. I know it's called X. I still stay with X. I'm also on Blue Sky, but I still find Twitter to be a good source of breaking news and a good source of comedy, so I stay with it. So I think that Elon Musk is going to hang on. What about the price of Bitcoin? Right now, it's over $100,000 for a Bitcoin. Reader, I ask, will it be over $100,000 year's end at the end of 2025? 52% of readers said no. It's not going to be over $100,000, and I still think that Bitcoin is a bubble. I think the whole thing is a sandcastle currency, a whole wardrobe of emperor's new clothes. But I have been wrong over and over about Bitcoin and and cryptocurrency in general, which it just seems crazy to me that solutions to really complicated math problems are worth money, and that value keeps going up, that we're just all pretending that it's worth money. It's worth something, but there seems to be nothing behind it except scarcity, and it's scarcity of something that's otherwise useless. So I don't get it, but I guess I've been wrong over and over again, and maybe I'll be wrong next year. The current average national price of gas, which I just told you was a whisker over $3, was it going to be higher than $3 at year's end? 82% of the readers said yes, and I agree with that. I'll take up some of these predictions with Cate Plys in the next hour. I'm Eric Zorn, sitting in for Joan Esposito on WCPT AM 820. I'll be right back with you after the news.
Check up on health with Chris Whitting.
Staying physically fit is very important for senior citizens. But how can a senior know what kind of exercise is best? Here's Dr. Henry Lodge from Columbia Medical School.
Nobody's joints are going to tolerate much impact as you get older. So from the aerobic perspective, things like the treadmills and ellipticals in the gym, bicycling, swimming, those are all wonderful, hiking, etc. And that's 60% of the equation. The other 40% of the equation is strength training of some kind. It turns out that much of aging is, in fact, getting weak. It's just losing the power to live life the way you want. And the only way to fight back against that and build bones and build muscle and build joints is to do weight training, which very few people find to be any fun. And our answer is we don't love it either, but the payoff is so huge that you really ought to make that investment of twice a week, getting to the gym and doing some significant strength training.
With Checkup on Health, I'm Chris Whitting.
Struggling with high cloud hosting costs and endless management headaches with your Microsoft Azure or AWS environment? Contact AmericanEagle.com for an assessment and see how they can save you time and money.
AP News, I'm Jackie Quinn. He clinched it on the first vote.
Congratulations, Mr. Speaker.
House Speaker Mike Johnson was reelected to the top spot in the House after some arm twisting and votes being changed. Johnson's vowing he'll cut government spending.
We're going to drastically cut back the size and scope of government. We're going to return the power back to the people. And in coordination with President Trump and his administration, we are going to create a leaner, faster, and more efficient federal workforce. We need to do that.
Also at the Capitol, Vice President Kamala Harris swore in members of the Senate as the new session begins today. Also in Washington, a stunning announcement from the Surgeon General about the dangers of alcohol. Our Sagar Magani reports.
Surgeon General Vivek Murthy says alcohol is a leading cause of cancer, and Americans need to be better informed about the risks with clear labels on drinks. Murthy writes alcohol consumption is to blame for nearly 1 million preventable cancer cases in the U.S. the past decade, and that 20,000 people die each year because of those.
Get ready for some rough weather hitting the eastern U.S. Here's our Rita Foley.
A strong snow and ice storm will soon hit the eastern two-thirds of the U.S., according to forecasters.
According to air traffic control audio provided by KABC-TV, the pilot of a small plane attempted to make an emergency landing shortly after takeoff from the airport at Fullerton, California.
RV-875, show me immediate landing required.
RV-875, Romeo full chair, can you make a left turn?
He crashed through the roof of a building. The pilot and a passenger were killed. New York Governor Kathy Hochul says she'll introduce legislation to expand the state's involuntary commitment laws. This is AP News. Funeral services begin Saturday in Georgia for former President Jimmy Carter. A state ceremony starts with a motorcade to Americus, Georgia. Then next week in Washington, D.C., the Metropolitan Police Chief, Pamela Smith, outlines the plans.
The public will have an opportunity to pay their final respects during a ceremony at the Naval Memorial and a procession to the U.S. Capitol on Tuesday, which will be followed by the former president lying in state in the Capitol Rotunda on Tuesday evening and Wednesday. And on Thursday, former President Carter's funeral service will be held at the Washington National Cathedral.
Jimmy Carter died last Sunday at the age of 100. The deadly fireworks accident in Hawaii on New Year's Eve has some calling for an end to amateur shows. 3 people were killed and 20 more injured in Honolulu. I'm Jackie Quinn, AP News.
This is 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
I'm meteorologist Ray Miller from the Weatherology Weather Center. Partly cloudy tonight with a low temperature of 12 degrees and northwest winds at up to 25 miles an hour. Saturday, sunny with a high temperature of 22. Sunday, cloudy, high temperature of 28. Northwest winds at 10 to 20. Monday, chance of light snow with a high temperature around 30. Tuesday, partly sunny and a high of 25. And for Wednesday, partly sunny with a high temperature around 19. That's the latest Chicago weather update. Right now, it's 25.
Remember when you get to work to hop over to WCPT820.com or the TuneIn Radio app and stream The Stephanie Miller Show. Weekdays 8 to 11 a.m. on Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter. Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago columnist, writer, and blogger Eric Zorn.
Joan will be back on Monday. I'm just filling the seat here for her. The good news, the great news, is that this show will be podcast. Joan Esposito, Live, Local, and Progressive, has its very own podcast. There's Joan Esposito full episodes and Joan Esposito featured interviews. You can subscribe to one, or why not both? The podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Amazon. Just search for Joan Esposito or get the links on Joan's show page by visiting heartlandsignal.com and clicking on her picture. So you can hear this show again and again. You just play it and put it on repeat for the kids at night. Help them to sleep. Speaking of podcasts, my longtime friend is with me right now, Cate Plys, who is a member of the Mincing Rascals podcast team. It's a podcast that she and I do with some other local pundit types. And she's a former Chicago reporter and columnist with the Chicago Reader, the Sun-Times, and the Tribune. She writes the Chicago history Substack Roseland Chicago, 1972. She's a novelist, a playwright, a woman about town. Cate, are you there?
Yeah, what a great intro. Thank you.
I referred to you earlier in the show as nerdy, but I meant it in a really positive way. That as a reporter, you are one of the most thorough and relentless and detail-oriented reporters that I know. And I've always appreciated your work and love being on the podcast with you. And I just thought we could kick around 2024 and 2025 today and just... like I said to you on a text, I said, let's just act like we're having a cup of coffee together, looking at the news like we usually do. And you told me that you had there was some family thing that happened on, was it Christmas Eve, or that was like out of a TV show? So let's start there. What happened?
Oh my God. Well, about a week before Christmas, I got either a 24-hour like rotavirus stomach bug or food poisoning. I still have no idea which. But my husband, Ron, did not catch it. So, after a few days, I was like, okay, it's safe for the kids to come home for Christmas. We're not giving them something. So I did not warn them not to come. They come. It's been a week and a half or so since I had my 24-hour throwing up session. There's been no indication that there's any issue going on whatsoever. Simultaneously, we have this whole thing where one of my daughters adopted a dog during COVID who's just a wonderful sweetie with them, but he grew up a feral dog who doesn't want to be around other dogs, kind of a problem dog to place in order to go to your relative's house who also has dogs. Okay, my first placement for him fell through for Christmas Eve. Found him a new one. My good friend was free, coming over to sit with him. Not afraid of him, as many people are, but she was not.
What kind of dog is it?
You know what? He's only a little 20-pound poodle.
Oh, okay.
But when he charges at you, growling, and jumps at you, it takes on a very different tone than 20-pound poodle. But I'm used to it. I know he's just going to jump at me and bump me with his front paws. But other people, not so sure. But my friend Monica, the one who gave you the macaroni and cheese recipe.
Oh yes, let me just interrupt.
Yeah.
You made me the hero of Thanksgiving. We were talking, and you said you had this great macaroni and cheese recipe, and you gave it to me. I guess your friend Monica's macaroni and cheese recipe, and I was out in New Jersey with my son and his partner and my wife and daughter, and I made the mac and cheese recipe, and it was a huch hit.
Oh my God, she got the biggest kick out of that. She just so loved that she did that for you.
Yeah, I think I should post that recipe. I think I asked you if it's okay if I did.
Yeah, you should. I will not name any names here, but I don't understand when people don't want to share recipes.
Yes, I don't get
that. Is the most joyful part of cooking. That's the whole point, is to make other people happy and help them recreate what you have done, so that it can make themselves happy, etc.
Yeah, I guess the fear is that you'll show up at a potluck and someone will have, Monica will show up at a potluck with her mac and cheese, and someone else will show up with the exact same dish, and she won't get the full credit for it. That's the only thing I can think of. Because sharing recipes, it's not. There's nothing proprietary, it seems to me, about most recipes, but people can be very squirrely about it. I think the secret ingredient may have been the heavy cream in it, but I can't remember for sure. And the Gruyere cheese, which I think we had to use Swiss because the New Jersey supermarkets do not carry Gruyere. So anyway,
Anyway, well, all right. So
I digress. Monica's got the dog.
Rings the doorbell. She rings the doorbell. She's coming over like 15 minutes before we all have to leave to travel about an hour to my sister-in-law's house. She rings the doorbell so she can be acclimated to the dog. The minute she rang the doorbell, my oldest daughter threw up. And my husband said to me, "Oh, where's the salad?" Because I am delegated on Christmas Eve, which my sister-in-law hosts, but I bring this amazing salad also from Monica, which I would be happy to give you if you're going to post recipes, because it's incredible. The thing is, you can't throw it together in 2 seconds because it involves poaching figs and orange juice, toasting walnuts, making the dressing with orange zest, etc. So, and I suddenly go, the salad, this is why I had such a relatively easy Christmas Eve day, because I had never gotten together the salad.
Which you had agreed to bring.
Which I bring every year, and everybody's really crazy about this salad. And suddenly I've got one girl throwing up, and my dog sitter now can't come in the house, and I didn't make the salad to bring with to my sister-in-law's. However, it did work out. My sister-in-law, she's very, she is a great social butterfly. It really doesn't matter. You come to the event. So my daughter, who was throwing up, did have to stay home, but I was able to just hand her a bowl to throw up into. She stayed with the problem dog. I ran and poached figs and toasted walnuts and made salad dressings, and we were only a half hour late. And nobody else ended up getting sick. So
that, I think it's the what's it called? The rotavirus? Is that what's going around? I've been reading a lot about that.
I heard that other people had it around then, but Ron didn't get it. I don't know about you, but anytime we've ever had that kind of a stomach bug in the house, if you're in the house, you get it. So I had pretty much decided that it was food poisoning, but I guess not.
Well, maybe it was. Came down with COVID. I was diagnosed right after Songs of Good Cheer this year, which is like mid December, and I think it was 2 days afterwards I got diagnosed, and another person in the cast was also diagnosed with it, or came down, tested positive, whatever, and I didn't, and Johanna did not get it. My wife Johanna did not get it, and she had it like a month and a half earlier, and I didn't get it. And we're no longer in that quarantine mode. Back in 2020, everyone was like keeping 6 feet apart from everybody, and I went when I got it in 2020. I think I went and stayed in another room, and we just said heck with it. I asked my doctor if he would prescribe Paxlovid for me, and he said, "Well, I could, but," he says, "I don't think that it does much for this current strain of the COVID-19 or whatever it is at this point, whatever they're calling it." But he says, "I don't think it does much." He says, "Almost all of my patients have what amounts to a bad cold for a couple of days," and so he said, I'll prescribe it for you, but I wouldn't, I don't recommend it. And I went with him because Johanna had taken Paxlovid, and she just felt like it made, just was sort of an unpleasant side effects to us. So she didn't really care for it, and she didn't think that it really helped. She thought that it had a rebound effect, which I hear is a medical myth. But anyway, for me,
I'm not sure it's a myth, but I will admit that I'm not at all clear on whether there are studies that are really definitive about this one way or the other. But I took the Paxlovid the one time I had it last year, and when I came down with it, I felt horrible within an hour. I got the Paxlovid instantly because Ron, when he had it a few months earlier, got the Paxlovid and didn't take it, so I had it right there in the house. So I took it right away, and I felt better within a few hours. I had been just absolutely laid out, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm fine. But I absolutely, after a week, got the bounce back, and I just had to go through what I would have anyway. And the horrible side effect of it just makes everything taste so horrible, just awful.
Right, that's what I've heard. But what I've read is, and here we are, dispensing medical advice to the least qualified people in Chicago.
Zorn.
Yes.
But I did say that I don't know for sure about the studies. It's just that I have not seen anything definitive myself.
Well, I guess my sense is that it deals with the symptoms, but it actually doesn't get rid of the virus, so that the virus just hangs on, and then then it's there. It's still there. In my case, I still have a mild cough. That's the only symptom I've had for 2 weeks or so on. So, but anyway, so Christmas Eve turned out okay, which is
yes,
the bottom line.
But it was kind of a crazy trio of things going on. It felt very much like a I Love Lucy episode for a while there.
Throwing up the doorbell rings.
My daughter was taken by surprise and threw up in the bathtub instead of the toilet.
That happens.
My husband's running around. Why did you throw up in the bathtub? Why the bathtub?
I know, and of course, just to be clear, these are adult children you have. These are
they are adult children. Yes.
They when you have little kids, they just throw up anywhere. It's like. And then you're cleaning up.
Right. You don't expect your 30-year-old to throw up in the bathtub, but she was not expecting to throw up. It took her by surprise.
Oh my goodness! Well, this is such an appetizing conversation. We're going to need to break. We're going to need to break here in a minute. But Lady B is not in the room, so we're going to just keep talking until she gets here, and then we'll take a short break. Okay. But this is Cate Plys, by the way. I'm talking to. She's a Chicago journalist and columnist and podcaster and Substacker, wears all kinds of different hats, and Lady B is back in the room. So I think we're gonna take a break here. I'm Eric Zorn, sitting in for Joan Esposito. We'll take a short break and be back. We got lots more to talk about, Kate. So hang around.
You know that you can listen to Chicago's Progressive Talk on WCPT AM 820. Stream us live at WCPT820.com and on the TuneIn Radio app. Or you can ask Alexa, Siri, or Google to play WCPT from TuneIn. But now you have another option. We're simulcasting our programming overnights, 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. on WSBC AM 1240 for a clearer reception in and around the city. Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820. And now overnights on WSBC 1240 AM, where facts matter.
This is a WCPT moment in labor. When Serena Williams won her title at the Tennis Grand Slam tournament, we know she gets the same prize money as her male counterpart. However, prior to 1973, that wasn't always the case. When Billie Jean King captured her first Wimbledon title in 1966, she was surprised to find out that the winner of the men's tournament received £2,000, while she only received £750. After being unable to find any tournaments for women, King and 8 other women formed their own tournament, the Virginia Slims Invitational, where each woman was paid $1 before posing for the famous picture of them each holding up their dollar, with the caption, "Contract Pros." While the move was bold, the pay discrepancies continued. King threatened to boycott the 1973 U.S. Open unless the women were paid the same as the men. Thanks to a grant from Band Deodorant, both the men and women's singles would take home $25,000. Despite the progress at the U.S. Open, it wouldn't be until 1984 that the Australian Open would execute equal pay, followed by the French Open in 2006, and finally Wimbledon in 2007. This has been a WCPT moment in labor. We're fighting for your rights.
Because facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago columnist, writer, and blogger Eric Zorn.
Break a leg. Have a good show.
They say break a leg to people who sit in on radio shows. That's interesting. Wouldn't you like break a vocal cord or something like that? I'm just sitting here. I got Cate Plys on the line. Kate is one of my favorite journalists in town. She's a historian. She's a Substacker. She's a member of the Mincing Rascals podcast team, which is the Don't Miss podcast. Kate, I've been going through my predictions for 2025. I gave you a little bit of a heads up that I might be asking you about some of this stuff. And I've gone over some of them already, but I did want to get back to one of the first ones I asked was, do you think the Chicago Teachers Union is going to go on strike in 2025?
To be fair, you told me we would talk about 2024, but okay.
We can talk about that. I mean, the thing is, well, wait.
Yeah, that's fine. I can predict.
But the thing is, 2024 will impact what happens in 2025. But
very definitely. I had originally been also tending towards thinking that they would not, because it would so be obviously counterproductive. But honestly, when I heard you talking about it in the previous hour, I started thinking, you know what? No, I think they will. Because, yes, you would think that Stacey Davis Gates understands at this point how counterproductive it would be, how unpopular the CTU has made itself among Chicagoans, among even its own membership, but she has not had a real propensity for that kind of, self-knowledge, whatever. She and Brandon Johnson have a lot alike, a lot in common on that point. And so actually I am beginning to sway in the other direction, and I think perhaps they will, because Pedro Martinez is showing that he absolutely is going to play for keeps on this, right? He now has gone to court and gotten the judge's order saying that he is the one who oversees and conducts those negotiations. And the school board members appointed by Mayor Johnson cannot come in and kind of horn in on that. So he's made it clear he's not going to be kowtowing to anybody, and thus, what's the likelihood he's going to bring her a contract that she wants that he hasn't so far, because he has not, as we know, wanted to relent on agreeing with the idea of taking out the I think originally was supposed to be originally a $100 million payday loan?
It was 300
larger.
It was 300 million.
300.
Yeah,
okay, that was the number in my head, but then I thought for a minute I might be getting it mixed up with the property taxes. Right. So he has shown he's not going to back down on that, and not going to back down on a host of other things. So she needs a lot to show that she should be reelected, and that her entire administration there should be reelected to head CTU. Their elections, their internal elections are coming up.
Yeah,
so I have to think there's a good chance that maybe she would go on strike.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and I had forgotten to include that in my questionnaire. It's a bit haphazard how I put it together. I kind of sit there and think, okay, local, okay, national, okay, international, sports. I don't do entertainment because I just don't know. People say, like, a lot of people ask, who's going to win the Academy Award for Best Picture? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the only movie that I've seen that is a potential winner is the Bob Dylan biopic. I'm
jealous. I haven't seen that yet.
And that could win, but who knows? I haven't seen the other movies, so I'm not going to put that in there. But Stacey Davis Gates, I digress again. Yeah, she's going to be facing re-election again. I don't know how popular she is among the rank and file. The thing about her and her comments is she comes on very strong. And to taxpayers in the city who tend to support the teachers union. I remember the last time the teachers went on strike, there was lots of horn honking. People they like teachers. They really do. And I want
the teachers to be well paid. I think generally people are on the side of the teachers getting a fair
totally
pay stub, and also people do want kids to go to good schools. I certainly myself have never run into someone who truly does not care about the substandard nature about, I don't even know what percentage, but a large percentage of the schools.
Yeah, I mean, the question, of course, is, what makes these schools substandard? Is it a lack of investment? Is it that the teachers don't care? I happen to believe, I am very pro-teacher in terms of, just about every teacher I have ever known really cares about their kids. Some of them buy their own supplies that the kids don't have. If you're like a greedy person or a lazy person, you're not going to get into teaching. I think I have a great respect for teachers, and I think the public does too. The problem with Stacey Davis Gates is that she comes on like it doesn't matter to her how much money it's going to cost, how much their demands cost. And she'll just say, she made some sort of joke about, how much is this going to cost? And she'll say, like, it's going to cost $5 billion plus 3 cents or something like that. Make a joke about it, rather than to say, I understand these are tough times. I understand that we have there are a lot of priorities, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of shareholders here that need to be thought about, that we have infrastructure problems, we have police and fire contracts, we have other expenses in the city. I think this should be a priority, but I understand where taxpayers are coming from. There's no sense of grace in the way she talks about this. And people have said, well, that's union people. Union leaders don't do that. Union leaders make demands and then they compromise. They don't come on saying, hey, we understand this is a tough situation, that would be a sign of weakness. But I think politically it's been a bad look for her and for Mayor Johnson. Mayor Johnson talks all about, want to invest in people, but he never seems to really think about or care that much about where that money is going to come from. And then he says, like, we'll tax financial transactions, or we'll tax the ultra rich is the new line that he puts out. And I agree with that. I was all in favor of the fair tax. I was all in favor of Bring Chicago Home referendum that we had that both failed. Did you vote for that? I did end up voting for it.
Bring for Chicago Home? Okay.
Yeah, I did. I was skeptical about what they were going to do with the money. I thought that the whole thing was poorly thought out, but the basic concept behind it. It's progressive. I'm in favor of progressive taxation, and we do it on the federal level. We should be doing it on the state level. We should be doing it, on ability to pay. Which is why I'm a little bit concerned about some of these new taxes and fees going in, where they're putting in speed cameras and they're charging an extra 3 cents for a shopping bag. Is that going to be progressive? I don't think so. I think people who are in an upper income bracket, or and it doesn't have to be very high up, but have the storage space and have maybe a vehicle where they can put extra shopping bags in the trunk and so on. I think those kind of taxes are going to hit lower income people a little bit harder than middle and upper income people. But anyway,
I completely agree. Just got to throw in there while we're talking about it, the extra speeding cameras that are going to be going in this year, and we don't know where yet, because the way they put that was they're going to go into wards where aldermen want them.
Oh, right. Come on. Aldermen don't want them.
I don't who wants them. I don't know. But no matter where they put them, I just can't think of any more regressive form of basically taxation. And you can say, we have programs where, lower economic people can get, their tickets waived or, much, much reduced. But even then, you're putting people who presumably are quite busy working, et cetera. You're putting them through a lot to get involved with that whole system to get that kind of relief for their tickets. And the Chicago, parking ticket operation is really ramped up now, right? It's a very small number of tickets that will get you a boot on your car. So if you don't hop right on it and take care of your tickets, you could be getting that boot.
Yeah.
So it seems like, I just can't think of a more regressive thing for them to be talking about doing.
I totally agree with that. We're going to take a break in just a second here, but I wanted to add that the idea that an alderman is going to require, is going to request speed cameras in his or her ward is crazy. Can you imagine what the blowback is going to be? Like, yeah, we had an option. I requested a speed camera by this park. Unless they're in a place where there's a lot of accidents, I think that's just a terrible idea.
But they've written into the budget, certain number of
$11 million,
hundreds of thousands of dollars. Is that how? Right, $11 million they expect to get out of these new speed cameras.
That's where they come from.
They think somebody's putting in these speed cameras, unless they're just lying about it for a budget.
That's Cate Plys. Kate's going to be with us after the break. Kate, stick around, and it's great talking to you. We'll be back. And Eric Zorn sitting in for Joan Esposito.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers. So we build specially adapted homes at Homes for Our Troops. And thanks to our donors and supporters, this life-changing gift of freedom is provided mortgage-free to these veterans. But we need you to join us, too, in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
I'm meteorologist Ray Miller from the Weatherology Weather Center. Partly cloudy tonight with a low temperature of 12 degrees and northwest winds at up to 25 miles an hour. Saturday, sunny with a high temperature of 22. Sunday, cloudy, high temperature of 28. Northwest winds at 10 to 20. Monday, chance of light snow with a high temperature around 30. Tuesday, partly sunny and a high of 25. And for Wednesday, partly sunny with a high temperature around 19. That's the latest Chicago weather update. Right now, it's 25.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Filling in today for Joan, Chicago columnist, writer, and blogger Eric Zorn.
It's Eric Zorn sitting in for Joan. I'm joined by Cate Plys, who is a Chicago reporter, columnist, pundit, substacker, member of the Mincing Rascals podcast team, formerly with the Reader, Tribune, and Sun-Times. She's in fact, if I did her entire professional vita, we would run out of time. So let's just say that she's a kind of accomplished local pundit. And just so I wanted to keep going with some of these, what we're looking forward to in the year. And just going to throw this out here. What do you think is going to happen with TikTok? Any ideas with that? That the United States is going to try to shut down TikTok or sell it to a company not controlled by China or another foreign adversary. Do you see that happening?
Well, as you know, Trump, who was the one who originally started talking about getting rid of TikTok because of its being controlled by China, has now gone and tried to put in a word with the Supreme Court to stop the whole process when he's not even president yet. Given the fact that he is now completely on TikTok's side, which, as I understand it, is due to the many millions of dollars he got for a campaign donation from some TikTok investors, and I forget their names. Given the fact that he is now on the side of TikTok, it seems likely to me that it won't get kicked out. What do you think?
I don't think that'll happen. I think that it would be a very politically unpopular thing to have happen. Now, I'm not on TikTok. I probably should be, but I'm not. I think to the relief of my children. Because I do have some very good dance moves. But anyway, but it's just it's an incredibly popular platform, I should say, and it is something that that you would take away from people. And there are a lot of replacements, YouTube Shorts and Facebook has Reels, and there are other things that sort of try to replicate TikTok. But for some reason, no one has been able to simply come in and just say, well, we'll do TikTok better than TikTok is doing TikTok, and I don't know how possible that is. But, people thought that MySpace was the coolest thing ever, and then Facebook came and just ate MySpace's lunch. And so it is possible that someone would that a company could come in, a U.S. company could come in and do that. I just don't see, I can imagine TikTok will just sell itself off or something. I just can't see it. But, I think the case against TikTok is pretty flimsy. John Oliver, I think you watch John Oliver, right?
I have to confess I don't watch John Oliver anymore. After Trump got elected, I just lost my taste for funny news shows. And I used to be all about The Daily Show and Colbert Report and John Oliver. I love John Oliver. But I would say I only watched his HBO show for a year or two, and I just lost my taste for it. As funny as he is, the smug attitude began to rub me the wrong way. And occasionally he has taken positions, I'll have to think about what they were, that I felt were just so clearly wrong that the combination of that and the smug attitude just really drove me away.
I got a similar issue myself with like MSNBC, that I used to watch that compulsively and comprehensively, and I've listened to Rachel Maddow's podcast. I've listened to Chris Hayes' podcast. A lot of the shows are podcasts on that station. And for some reason, after the election, I was listening a lot the lead up to the election, but then after the election, I just felt so discouraged and felt like I'd been sort of spun around and spun up by what was going on, and I just didn't need to be in that space anymore. John Oliver, though, is so funny. And he
is so funny.
And he does. And
I don't deny it.
And he does such great... I mean, it's not just commentary, but it is, is heavily reported investigative punditry, basically, investigative comedy. I mean, it is so good. Anyway, I mean, I bring that up because
so he looked at this issue.
He looked at this issue, and he basically was saying that TikTok is bad. It harvests all this information, but it's probably no worse than all the other social media things. And like so over in Beijing, they're saying, well, this guy likes to do the funky chicken, and this guy, or this guy. I don't see that it's any greater security threat. He was saying they didn't see it's any particularly greater.
I'm going to push back on that just a little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
As I recall, because the algorithm, the company itself, and thus the algorithm is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. And we all understand more and more lately how much these social media algorithms drive people, drive their opinions, just drive their whole outlook. And is that something that we really want to have in the it's bad enough to have it in the hands of like Mark Zuckerberg
or Elon Musk, even worse.
Elon Musk. But do we want it in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party? I recall that a year or two ago, or maybe it was around October 7th, that they started pushing the Osama bin Laden letter to America. And it became highly popular on TikTok. And, all these young people who have no memory whatsoever of 9/11 don't understand what happened there, don't understand even who Osama bin Laden were. You were seeing, stories about how they're like, hey, this guy's great. He makes a lot of sense. I love Osama bin Laden.
If you like Osama bin Laden, you'll love the Unabomber, right?
Right. Well, so this is just an example, though, of how they can, in fact, use their algorithm to push narratives, and it just seems like a bad idea to me. So I was certainly not opposed to the idea of let's not have the Chinese Communist Party in charge of this very powerful social media.
Well, yeah, I think technically they're not in charge. I think it's owned by a quote unquote private company in China.
Technically, but it is.
I mean, I take your point on that. But the big core of my prediction survey, and I'm really glad that you're here to talk about this, because this is the one question I have is multiple choice. It had to do with what we're all thinking about in 2025 is what will Donald Trump do? I mean, he said he's going to do a lot of stuff, but what's he going to do this coming year? And I asked readers what they think of all the bloviations and puffery and